Hi, welcome back to video number 3 of our series, Discover Your Money Temperament and Unleash Your Money's Superpowers. In this video, I'll be talking about your money beliefs. Before we get started, I want to review one critical slide that we begin all our presentations with. Know yourself with money. To know yourself, you must sacrifice the illusion that you already do. First, a quick review of some of the things we talked about last week. First, we talked about our biology. And remember, our ancient brain does two things very, very well. Keep us alive and pass on our genes. It doesn't manage money well, but you probably already know that. Most of last week's video was devoted to the concept of what I call the feeling thinking brain. This is a technique I used in my book to keep this whole brain biology as simple as possible. Now, we all know our brain is infinitely complex. There's a lot going on, and most scientists don't even know how things work. In fact, we are continually being surprised and finding new things about the human brain. But keep in mind, the feeling brain, it's in charge most of the time. It's primitive, reactive, emotional, multitasks. The default, automatic, generalized, quick, and based on experience. This is where we spend most of our time, and this is where most of our spending happens. Our thinking brain, on the other hand, is our modern brain. It is what separates us from most other animals in the world. Our thinking brain is modern, proactive, rational, single task, the exception. We only go here when it makes sense to go there. And sometimes it's difficult to get into our thinking brain. It's on purpose, specific, slow, and likes to be proven about things. So keep in mind, our feeling brain keeps us alive. Our thinking brain does our taxes. Now, where do you think you spend most of your time? Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about our beliefs with money. Where do they come from? What are they? Why are they so important? Well, we know through current research that our money beliefs are well established by age 12. That's kind of a scary thought. That means how you think and feel about money today is a reflection about where you were in middle school, maybe grade school, who you hung around with, how you felt about money, how you reacted about money. Think about it. Where did you grow up? What were the attitudes about money back then? What were the values? How did your family think and feel about money? But more importantly, your peer group. You see, your environment at that point formulated in your feeling brain your basic money beliefs. Now, here's a key point. They are influencing you today non-consciously. So if you still have this great desire to have a mullet and go buy a starter jacket, that may be because that was something that was driving you back in middle school. Now today it may not be a mullet and a starter jacket. It might be a big car, it might be clothing or whatever. Beliefs with money are natural to you. They're a legacy of where you grew up, what was important to you at that time, the values of that time. Now, they can be changed, but it's difficult. It takes some effort. And that's a challenge we're going to talk about later in the presentation. So, your belief set. It's who you are, and you can thank mom and dad, but also the crew you hung around with. Okay, you have a basic belief set with money and a basic set of values with regard to money. But the single biggest influence on your spending decisions and how you think and feel about money and the things you own and the things you do and the things you find important are driven by our culture. We own things, we go places, we look the way we do because of our culture. And as a culture, particularly in the United States, we like to buy stuff, all kinds of stuff. I love the picture in this slide. I mean, it's a reflection of who we are as humans. This gentleman here is obviously incredibly proud of this house. It's a reflection of who he is, his values with regard to money, his spending decisions, and who he is. Now think for a second. Why do you shop where you shop? Why do you wear the things you wear? What kind of car do you drive and why? How does your culture influence your spending decisions? And when I talk about culture, there are microcultures, which is your home and your block. Then maybe your school, your county, your region, state, and maybe country. But when you're talking about culture, it used to be so much simpler. Think about it. If you lived in a small home on a subsistence farm a couple generations back, the importance of your culture was not as complex as it is today. I mean, think about it. Back in just a couple of generations ago, maybe your grandparents or great-grandparents, they may not have traveled much farther from where they grew up during their entire lifetime. Maybe at that time they worked for the same employer for years. They had a small house. They thought thrift, regardless. But who they were at that time reflects the culture of that time. Let's think about the culture today. Yes, we live in a spending culture, and we're constantly being bombarded, primarily through social media, as to what to wear, what to do, how to act, how to look. And because of the impact of the internet, smartphones, and social culture, we get immediate feedback, and we adjust accordingly non-consciously. Our feeling brain takes in this information. We make decisions, and we spend. There's a recent study done that I got a kick out of. Back a few years ago, when reality TV was just getting started, there were a number of shows on flipping houses. And when this was just getting started, people started getting fixated on what was going on in those houses. And what was interesting is when we sit down and watch television, our mirror neurons, which is a component of our feeling brain, can put us right in that circumstance. So we knew, we're doing different studies and research, that people that were watching a lot of these flipping shows were watching what they appeared to be normal Americans buying houses and in just 30 minutes turning them over and making a boatload of money. Well, a couple things happened, and this is part of the contribution to the great meltdown in 2008, 2009. People started thinking, how hard can it be? Man, this guy can flip a house, why can't I? And it was perpetuated with the internet, it was perpetuated with social media, it was perpetuated with television. And all of a sudden people started jumping aboard. And that phenomena spread across the United States. Now, an interesting footnote. Prior to a lot of these shows, stainless steel appliances were not that big a deal. They were available commercially in some very high-end houses, but not something that the average American had in their home. I mean, at that time, hey, the old avocado, white, or copper-colored appliances were more than adequate, as were the tile on your floor, the way your kitchen looked, what you dressed in, and what you drove. But with the advent of the internet, with the reality shows, these appliances started showing up in these flipped houses. And what do you think we started doing? We go, wow, I need one of those. And the whole value set of what it meant to have a home, what it meant to drive a certain car, a certain lifestyle, began to change. So keep in mind, our culture, without doubt, is the single most important driver in our spending belief set. How we think and feel about money, how we put priorities on things, the values we form over time with regard to what's important in our lives is absolutely driven by our culture. I know this in my own life, but I also know it working with hundreds of clients who came from not only different parts of the United States, but also different countries. And I'd sit down and talk to them about money, and they'd have very different value sets, which was a reflection of their culture. So remember, if you're going to become a good spender, if you're going to get your control of your money, if you're going to really get focused on where you want to be very, very aware of how your culture influences your spending.